southeastern mountains offer us a particular kind of wilderness, the kind Daniel Boone set out to conquer. Dense mountain forests, thick undergrowth, lots of evergreen shrubs, laurel, rhododendron, holding on in all four seasons, poison ivy running up the tree trunks, broken tree branches caught by stronger limbs below them as they fell or scattered on the ground. The brambles of blackberry bushes, deep, steep ravines, hidden by years and years worth of fallen leaves. And it would not be unusual to look up and see a family of deer or maybe even a family of black bears. It would not be unusual to see a snake, maybe a copperhead, slithering away. Desert wilderness, like the one Jesus retreated to after his baptism, is a different kind of wilderness from ours. The Judean wilderness, into which Jesus was driven by the Spirit, which lies between Jerusalem and the Dead Sea, that's different. It's dry and rocky and barren and hilly, like some of our southwestern desert. This would be a great time to check out a desert wilderness. It's a lot cooler now than it will be in the summertime. It would be a pleasantly warm, dry version of winter. I remember going to Palm Springs once in the wintertime, and it was a nice weekend. Nice way to warm up and just be out in the open air. It was a pleasantly dry and warm version of winter compared to what we've been having lately. You might see there even a few desert blooms scattered around. At this time of year, the seemingly endless sky, miles and miles of open space, the quiet, that blue sky, and that could give a visitor quite a release from the clouds and rain and mud and snow and fallen limbs that we've been seeing lately here in the eastern wet wilderness. Life in either kind of wilderness, whether it's mountainous forest or mountainous desert, can be beautiful, but it also can be difficult. In the desert wilderness, shelter is sparse and scattered. Mostly it's in caves in the hillsides. Water can be rare. In the desert, one can scour our human skins raw with flowing sand. Wild animals roam. In the Judean desert to which Jesus was drawn by the Spirit, there are ibex and poisonous vipers, reptiles, and in Jesus' day, Arabian leopards. Even the desert sunshine that we might at first find welcome this time of year can become a wanderer's enemy into the other seasons. The land can seem empty for miles there. Getting somewhere can seem hopeless because it just seems so far away, and it maybe really is. And those who are not familiar with the landscape may feel overwhelmed, and help is likely to be far away. That's the kind of wilderness into which Jesus was driven by the Spirit for 40 days and 40 nights. Like that good old Southern expression of my childhood, 40-11. In biblical speak, the number 40 means just a whole lot, we're not sure how much. And significantly, more significantly than that, 40 days in the Bible is how long Moses was up on Mount Sinai receiving the Ten Commandments. 40 years is how long the newly escaped Israelites spent time in the Negev wilderness down between Egypt and the Promised Land, unlearning the lives of slavery in Egypt, learning instead to trust their future to God and to obey the Holy One. 40 days and nights is how long God enabled Elijah to walk to Mount Sinai to find refuge from Queen Jezebel's death threats because of the bread and water that God miraculously provided for him as he fled. In a cave on that mountaintop, Elijah heard God in the sound of silence. The desert's really good for that. The 40 days that Jesus spends in the wilderness mark him as one of God's most important servant leaders, like Moses and Elijah, somebody who can be trusted to lead God's people into a new life, free from being slaves to sin. So what about those wild beasts that Jesus was with? What about those angels who ministered to him? Well, they remind us of the story of Adam and Eve, who were created to live in the perfection of Eden, where every plant and every creature was created good. And from that garden, humankind ultimately was banned because Adam and Eve's sin endangered God's good creation. And after Eden's serenity was lost to them, humankind would have to fight off other creatures like poisonous snakes, all those wild things. They would have to work hard for their food, struggling with thorns and thistles. Eve would struggle to bear children. In time, Adam and Eve would die, returning to the soil from which they were made, ashes to ashes and dust to dust. So as a final protection for the tree of life, God placed cherubim with flaming swords, which they would wave around to keep any invaders out, to guard that tree of life, so that sinful humankind could not mess with it. In today's gospel lesson, the story of humanity's sin is being rewritten by the one who emerges out of the water of his baptism to hear the words, "You are my son, the beloved, with you I am well pleased." The heavens, that blue layer between earth and heaven, as the Bible writers knew it, was torn open. A dove descends, like the dove of peace and hope who returned to Noah's ark, as a sign that the waters of the flood were safely receding. So today's gospel account of Jesus in Judea, in the wilderness there, is a reversal, a revision of that story of Adam and Eve's sin. Jesus is tempted by Satan too, that adversary, that false witness, for 40 days and that long, indeterminate time. Unlike Adam and Eve, unlike the newly rescued Israelites who reveled in idolatry while Moses was up on Mount Sinai for those 40 days receiving the commandments, Jesus lives up to God's claim on him. Jesus lives up to God's claim on him. He responds truly as God's beloved son. He allows the Spirit to push him into that Judean desert wilderness, and then he does not allow Satan to tempt him off whatever course God is sending him on. When Jesus is present, the wild beasts are peaceful once more as they were in Eden. And angels, the messengers of God, are serving Jesus rather than trying to guard the tree of life from its human swords and fire. We all have times where we are driven into a wilderness, where we too are tempted by Satan, especially to give up trusting in God. It may come when someone we dearly love dies. It may come when we realize that our children are in trouble with their lives somehow, and we no longer know how to help them. Maybe we'll feel driven at retirement when we don't know what the rest of our lives is about. Or maybe we'll be driven there by loans we can't repay, cars we can't afford to repair, rejection from somebody close, somebody with whom we have shared our hopes and our hearts and our dearest dreams. In whatever desert we may be pushed into, we need to remember that Christ survived Satan's temptations, and he shares authority over everything with the Father. And he has already claimed us in his own baptism because we have been baptized into his life. He has claimed us as his own. When we are pushed out into the wilderness, we need to remember that even the deepest, scariest wildernesses, Jesus knows the way home from them, the way home to the Father, and he has promised to be with us until the end of time, with us until the end of time. He knows through his own experience what wilderness journeys can lead us to vistas we might never have imagined for ourselves. Our 40 days might be the beginning of a life repurposed, as Jesus' life was repurposed through his baptism and his time in the wilderness listening to God. So I have a suggestion for you today. Take that insert with the readings in it for today's lesson and pray Psalm 25 that we had today. Pray it every day until you are able to know the name of your wilderness. It may not be what you think. Pray not for the solution you imagine, but pray that you will be able to act on whatever possibility Christ sees in your life. Whatever possibility has driven you to this wilderness. Let Christ open up the heavens for you so that God's peace can descend on you. Let Christ nudge you toward what good news is for the rest of your life and for your loved ones' lives. Again, it may be something very different from what your solution would be right now. And if you're in the wilderness now, pray. Rethink things. Let God open the heavens for you and drive you into that place, a wilderness, where you can see and hear God's blessing descending on you like a dove. It will come. Ask God to make your path through this wilderness wide and straight, and then entrust yourself to Jesus' good news. The time is fulfilled now. When wilderness happens upon us, the time is now. So let the days of Lent open our eyes, open our ears, open our hearts. Let the days of Lent say to us, listen, the time is fulfilled. The time is now. And if you're not now in a wilderness yourself, pray for someone who is. Amen.
Amen.